Okay, let's say people are sat down, meeting, interview, podcast, dinner. What are the do's and don'ts when we're sat down?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so remember that when you're seated, you can still look very, very confident and powerful. The biggest thing you can do when you're seated from a nonverbal, should we talk nonverbal or verbal or both?
Both.
Okay, we'll do nonverbal because we were just talking about it. One is you want to angle your torso towards the person you're speaking with, especially your camera. The biggest mistake that I see on Zoom is someone has their camera here, but their screen is angled off. So while they're typing and taking notes, their entire body and their face is actually angled somewhere else, and they just glance over at the camera. Oh, it is almost impossible to feel like you have a really good connection with someone when you are not physically aligned with them. So when I'm on the same nonverbal page as you, our toes, our torso, our head are angled towards each other. We literally feel like we're on the same page. Like physically, we feel like we're on the same page. So wherever you're seated, I like a swivel chair, or if I'm at a restaurant with someone and they put us kind of kitty corner, I will like angle my chair so that I'm angled more towards them. So one, try to get on the physical same page. Second, and this is a harder one, but I think it's fun to talk about, which is I try to mirror the person that I'm sitting with physically and verbally. That is why my way of showing respect. So, for example, if I sit down with someone who is a really fast talker, really high energy, lots of hand gestures, I'll kind of dial up my physical energy. I'm leaning in, I'm using more gestures, I'm using more facial expressions. On the other hand, if I'm with someone who's quite stoic, maybe more of a slow talker, maybe they're more purposeful, they don't use a lot of gestures. I also slow myself down, slow down my gestures, because we do feel like we like to be around people who are like us, who have similar communication styles. And so that's the next thing you can do is very subtly, and I wouldn't mimic them, but try to match them like a thermostat, try to get on their temperature.
What about crossing arms, hands on table, stuff like that?
Okay, so when we talk about blocking is when any barrier is between your body and mine. And typically, instinctively, this is like back from our caveman days, we don't like when someone is blocking because we feel like it's a barrier between you and me that I might not trust you. Research, this is actually more important. I want people to perceive you as open. And definitely, definitely, this is very clear in the research. People rate folks with crossed arms as closed, distant, and closed minded, right? So you are going to be rated as less charismatic if you have crossed arms, even if you're cold. Doesn't matter the reason. People, they've rated videos and job interviews and on dates. We do not like barriers. But more importantly for me, what really convinced me, because I do sometimes like to cross my arms, is you become more closed minded. They have found that when they ask people to come up with creative ideas, but they're crossing their arms, they come up with less creative ideas. So literally, closed body equals closed mind.
Mm.
When I'm in a meeting or a date or presentation, or whatever, I want to be as creative as I possibly can. I want to be big thinking. And so I know that the smaller my body is, the more blocking I have, the worse that's going to be. So open body, I like visible hands, obviously. And I also think that the more you can lean, that's another warmth cue. So when we really like something, we want to lean closer towards it. We want to, it's actually our five senses. We want to see it, smell it, touch it, taste it. Is that what we want? We want to do our five senses. I don't know if we want to taste each other, but we want to get closer to it. We like things and we want to get closer to them. So you want to do the same thing. If you really like someone's idea, wow, tell me more. Lean in
Mm.
towards it. If you really like someone, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Right? Leaning in towards them. It's like a nonverbal bolding of like, I like you so much. I like this idea so much. I physically want to get closer. It works on camera too, which is really nice. And also makes me feel more engaged. Like when I leaned into you, I was like, oh yeah, I do like this tip. Like it was like a trick for me even internally just now.
What about hands on face, hands around face, hands on
Oof.
mouth?
Research from Cornell looked at four untrustworthy behaviors that when people see them, they immediately feel a little bit of untrust or mistrust. One of them was hands touching face. That was one of them. So research says that when someone is touching their face, we typically don't like it. But I want to add a little caveat here. There are different ways of doing this. For example, it can be quite pensive to hold your chin very still and think while holding. When you are rubbing your face, so rubbing your chin, biting your nails, rubbing at your eyes, totally different. Why? Liars often touch their mouth and their eyes. They also touch their nose. So lie detection research, I think these research communities were acting independently of each other. But yes, as humans, we see someone touching their face as untrustworthy. Why? In the lie detection community, research has found that liars are literally trying to hold things in. So liars will often cover their mouth because, like, instinctively they're trying to, like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. You might even see, like, if you watch Bill Clinton's testimony during the Monica Lewinsky trial, which I've coded in depth, he literally does a shush gesture to himself as he's waiting for his question that he's about to lie on. Like, literally, he's holding a shush gesture up. Also, we tend to mouth block as like, shh, it's going to get me in trouble.
Mm.
Do not say it. We also, and this also happened in the Monica Lewinsky trial, I believe Alan Hirsch is the researcher. He counted the number of times that Clinton touched his nose, and he found that it was like 8x times when he was lying versus his truthful answers. This is because there is a little bit of a Pinocchio's nose. They found that we have tissue in our nose that tingles sometimes when we feel guilt. And so it kind of like liars will often, they can feel that tingling in their nose. So they touch their nose. So we instinctively know this. And the last big one is eye blocking. When we don't want to see something, like, oh, I'm embarrassed, I don't like it, we will try to cover our eyes, close our eyes because we are ashamed of it. So shame or guilt, they're very close, they're not the same thing, will often cover our eyes. So I'm pretty against face touching, as only if it's still. You know, if you're pensively holding a chin pose, okay. Otherwise, I would say do not make someone think you're a liar, right? Do not accidentally do that. Oh, I should make a note. There is no Pinocchio's nose. There's no one cue that makes someone a liar. And so these are like one-off cues. Like if you're talking to someone and they haven't touched their nose once, but all of a sudden you're like, so what do you think of the new girl? And they're like, yeah, she's great. That's when I would be like, why did that just happen around that weird verbal? So you're looking for clusters of red flags when we're talking about lie detection that are signals of shame or guilt or fear.
What were the other 3 actions?
Okay, so touching the face, touching the stomach. So like rubbing or touching your torso or your stomach, again, a blocking behavior, right? Like instinctively we know that. Wringing or rubbing hands. So knuckle cracking, wringing hands, movement around hand self-touch, which makes us nervous. And face touching. And blocking behaviors, right? So like any kind of like sudden crossing or blocking.
What
So
is it that we're doing? Are we trying to self-soothe there in some way?
yes, and that's the problem with lie detection and why it's not a true science is it's very hard to separate anxiety from guilt. If someone's accusing you of lying, you're going to be anxious and you're going to do some of those behaviors. We're trying to self-soothe, right? We're like, for example, we rub our neck, right, to like calm ourselves down. That reminds us of being a baby when our parents rubbed us. We bite our pens or our fingers as a pacifying gesture because it reminds us of sucking at the boob or a pacifier. They're all instinctive, but it's hard to know the difference between guilt and anxiety.
Okay, talk to me about detecting lying then. What's true and what's false?
Okay, so there are statistical cues to deceit. These are things that liars typically do, but there's no one cue. So the way that I do lie detection, the way that I teach lie detection is I think of it as you have to know someone's baseline before you can know what they do when they lie. So we can actually do this together. I think that everyone should know their lying red flags. Every single person on this earth has things they typically do when they lie. It is good to know what yours are. Know what yours are. So I'm going to help you figure out what those are. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. So here's what I want you to do. You can do this after the interview, okay? First, you have to figure out what your baseline is. So I want you to turn on your camera and I want you to say your name, your age, and then I want you to say, so like on your phone or whatever, then I want you to tell me what you had for breakfast yesterday. This is how you look when you're recalling something. So Chris, just think about what you had for breakfast yesterday. Okay, so you looked up and to your right. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so that means that when Chris is recalling a truth, you tend to look up to your right, right? So, by the way, there was a huge myth back in the day that, like, if you look up to the left, you're lying. If you look up to the right. No, people do look up when they lie, but they also look up when they're recalling and they're remembering. So we would know that, Chris, when you're recalling a truthful thing, you tend to look up to the right and maybe down over to the side. Also, I wasn't seeing your whole body, but I'd want to know your hand gestures. I want to see your feet. And then I would also ask, I would hear your verbal answer.
Mhm.
Do you use ums or likes? Are you using a high voice like this? Are you using a low, low voice like this? I want to know where you went. So record your response to that, code it vocally, non-verbally, verbally. What are you doing? Then what I want you to do is that's your baseline, your recalling baseline. Then what I want you to do is tell me your most embarrassing story. Pretend you're talking to me, right? Okay. We do these, by the way, in our lab. We have them, people submit these videos. And when you tell me your most embarrassing story, I want you to kind of relive it. Like I want you to recall the humiliation that you felt during that embarrassing story. I'm trying to get your body a little bit nervous, right? I'm trying to see your nervous baseline. Code it vocally, verbally, audibly. What are you doing? You'll see we've done this with hundreds of different participants. Movement goes up. Typically, people touch their face. They're using more gestures, or they go really stoic, deer in the headlights, like very, very still, whites of eyes showing, recounting it like they wish they were dead. Like, it tends to be either one. So record yourself. It's your nervous baseline, your nervous tells. And you should know what your nervous tells are as well, because I'll tell you what, you're probably doing them during your presentations. And you should know how to counteract them. Right? Like I know what my nervous tells are. I work very hard to keep them under wraps because I don't want to infect you with nervousness. The last one, the hardest one, I want you to make up an embarrassing story that did not happen to you. And I want you to tell it to me, the camera, trying to convince me that it's real. So pretend like this was you. It cannot be a real story. What we're doing, I don't want you to rehearse this ahead of time. Your body is going to leak deception tells. It's going to leak, this is not true. You're going to see what you look like when you're trying to come up with a lie. Those tells are your lying tells.
And the goal is to make lying tells into recalling tells?
Well, depends on what your goals are. My goals are to look less nervous. Those are my goals. I don't want to teach you to be a better liar, although you could do that with this. My goals really are just to make sure you're not accidentally leaking nervousness. So many really smart people that I work with, most of my students are like super smart, high achievers, off the charts, but they don't know how to present themselves well. And my number one goal is your ideas are great. Don't ruin them with nervous cues. So that's my goal, is that you're identifying your nervous cues so you can kind of displace them or stop them. That is the first step for yourself. You also can practice this with your friends, partner, member, bring them in on it. Do it with them. You will then see your partner's nervous tells and your partner's lying tells. You will see your kids' nervous tells and your kids' lying tells. And that's when we begin to look for red flags. So there are certain cues: touching the nose, touching the face, eye blocking. Another really big lying red flag is people drop pronouns. This is called statement analysis. This is an email. So there's some really interesting science about lie detection in emails, which I'm working on currently. When we lie, we don't want it associated with us. Lying feels dirty. Lying feels bad. So what we do without realizing it is we drop the personal pronoun. So instead of I'm running late, we say running late, sorry. Instead of saying I didn't see your email, we say must have gone to spam. Instead of saying my car broke down, we say oh, got broken down, be there in a bit. So if you see lack of pronouns, again, nothing's a definite lie. It just, when I see that over and over again in emails or in a certain area of conversation, I'm always like, why are they using distancing language, separating themselves from the actual content? The other big lying tell that I like to share with people is the disgust microexpression. So disgust is when we raise our nose up and we crinkle our nose, we flash the upper whites of our teeth like it, you can try it, yeah. Disgust is when we have a lot of activation around our nose and our upper lip. We do not make that expression lightly. Like that's a very weird thing to do with our face. And we often see it if someone smells something bad or tastes something bad. You also see it with liars. In our research, we asked people to play 2 truths and a lie with us. So like tell 2 true statements and 1 lie. We found that lying makes us feel dirty, like a little bit self-disgusted. And so sometimes people will show disgust while they're talking, while they're sharing the lie. So it looks like this. If I were to say, so what do you think of the new guy? Oh yeah, he's great. He's great. And they have the disgust showing in their face. It usually means that someone does not feel good about something, but they are afraid to share the truth. So disgust is one of the other statistical cues that you will see misaligned, like misaligned nonverbal and verbal.
You mentioned there about smart people sometimes struggling with being charismatic.
Mm.
Explain that to me.
Smart people often have the mistaken belief that book smarts equal people smarts. They hope that all their hard work and great ideas and brilliance and talent will translate because it's so good. The problem is, what the research shows is that competence without warmth leaves us feeling suspicious. So you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't know how to share it with warmth, likability, trust, people cannot believe it. Doesn't matter how good the idea is. The kind of famous example, I share this in my book, is Jamie Siminoff. He's the founder of Ring. He went on Shark Tank, and Ring is that video doorbell company. Ring is literally $1 billion idea. Like, he went on to sell Ring for billions of dollars. He went on to get Shaq, Richard Branson, incredible investors. What most people don't know is he went on Shark Tank, pitched $1 billion idea, and got no deals. Like, a complete failure of a pitch. Tons of pushback. They didn't believe him. They didn't like him. Why? He relied too much on his book smarts. He had a dialed pitch. The numbers were good. The words were good, but he looked scared. And he also went really mute with his nonverbal cues. Muting in itself is a nonverbal cue. And smart people think, I don't need to think about all this body language stuff. I don't need to worry about my vocal power. My ideas are strong enough. So Jamie was delivering a great pitch verbally, but he looked completely mute. And so the sharks were like, I can't get a read on this guy. And they would not invest. And so for smart people, they have to learn no cues is bad cues. The wrong cues are even worse. So how do you frame your ideas, your competence with warmth, with trust, with likability? That balance is really hard for my smart students.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting that it gets in the way. It's as much a block as it is an enabler. I had a great conversation recently with William von Hippel, and he was talking about this tension between warmth and competence. I know that's something that you talk about a lot, and it was interesting to see an anthropologist talk about it as well.
Yes.
People that are competent and demonstrate competence is often seen as being more cold. People that are warm are seen as less competent. And you've got this sort of ruthless tension between the two.
Yes. And I think also we forget that highly charismatic highly charismatic people are a blend of both, but they also use warmth and competence like a thermostat. And so we have two goals. One is making sure that you're showcasing both, verbally as well as non-verbally. So even in my emails, we do an email audit with our students where we have them literally calculate the number of warm cues and competent cues in their emails. Because your emails are a big part of your communication, especially nowadays, we're constantly online. So one, you want to be both, but the real charismatic people, the really good ones, if they know they're emailing a competent person, they dial up the competence. If they know they're emailing a warm person, they dial up the warmth. And we can do this with very specific cues. Emojis, exclamation points, words like yay, wow, fab, and whoop. Very warm, right? It's like a little button. You can just sprinkle them in. It's like warm, 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 warm. Whereas competence, numbers, data, graphs, percent, words like power through, efficient, capable, master, those are all very competent cues. And so we can be in control of how people perceive us, but also more importantly, we can also infect people with warmth and competence. The reason why warmth and competence is important is because very charismatic people are making other people feel more charismatic. If you show up as warm and competent, you make everyone in the room more warm and competent. That's why we like highly charismatic people, is we want to catch their warmth. We want to catch their competence. So if you are using warm and competent verbal cues in your emails, you are literally gifting warmth and competence to everyone gets them, which means you get better replies, faster replies, and you become more memorable. Research proves that we can produce warmth and competence with the kinds of words that we use. And that is super empowering, not only to us, but to others.